Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You are tuned into the quest for wedding film mastery, part 4, Cinematic Alchemy, hosted by Sony, of course. A huge thank you to them for sponsoring this wonderful series with even more wonderful Amber and Garrett Baird. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it. We love
It,
being here.
it's been great to have you guys on. I tell you this every time you come on. It's like you guys have such a good, like you gel so well. And obviously, the information that comes with it is equally great. But it's just a pleasure to have you guys on. I gotta say, alchemy is one of those words that I love alchemy. I love the idea of alchemy. I was just looking at it the other day. It was one of those boring Google days where you're Googling stuff and looking into alchemy. So I'm super interested to see where cinematic alchemy takes us. So I'm going to get out of your way. I'm going to invite everybody to answer, no, not answer, to ask your questions in the YouTube chat. I'm going to turn it over to Amber and Garrett now. And guys, I'll see you in a bit for some Q&A.
Thank you so much,
Thanks so much.
Derek.
Yeah, if you have any questions, anything we'll answer. I mean, we don't hold anything back. So, and no matter how you think it may be insignificant, it's probably not, because if you have the question, it's not insignificant. So please ask us anything.
Yeah. And not only that, we're pretty open on social media too. So if you think of something and you didn't drop it in the chat box, just let us know and we can try to answer it and maybe make like a story out of it too so we can share it with everyone else. So
Absolutely.
we really appreciate B&H and Sony having us here again. It has been a minute because we had a vacation slash work trip, but we are back and
Well, you had a vacation.
I had a
I kind of
vacation.
showed up
You had
just
a work
on the
trip.
very end of
It's
it and
okay.
did some work.
It's okay. It was a lovely
I'm not
vacation slash
bitter.
work trip.
I'm not bitter at all.
Okay. We'll talk about that later.
So what is alchemy?
Well, so that now that you've asked, in the olden times, and I'm not talking about 1998. Okay. In the olden times, there was this theory that you could take metal and do some special stuff to it and change it into something else. Like take a
Gold.
non-precious metal to turn it into a precious metal.
Right.
So what my idea was, we can go into pretty much any venue because we have and make it something that's beautiful. And it is easy for us to say that now because we get beautiful weddings
Right.
now. And I hate saying that, but we haven't always gotten beautiful weddings. And it broke my heart. One year I had a bride who emailed me and said, "I hope you can make my wedding look as good as you did the others because mine's not as fancy." And it just like broke my heart and made me want to work even harder
We
for
killed
them.
that one. We
We
loved it.
did.
Yeah, yeah.
Made me want to work even harder for her because I knew that that was a struggle for her to hire us. And so not only that, but she was just like the most precious thing. And she was definitely feeling insecure about the way that her budget wasn't maybe lining up to someone else's.
Oh,
So
is it hers either in the basement of a YMCA or Moose Lodge or something? Yeah,
over in
I think it
Lawrenceville.
was a Moose Lodge in
Yeah,
the basement.
they
So,
had a beautiful outdoor ceremony
yeah.
and they decorated with us and they put their heart and soul into it. And it turned out like, and we did a engagement show, super sweet couple.
It was one of those events where you knew the couple stretched, their
Yeah.
budget to fit you in because they love your work so much, and that is like the ultimate compliment when you know that maybe they really couldn't afford you, but they made it work somehow, and so that makes you want to do an extra special job. Not that we don't do great jobs on all of them, but on those you work a little bit harder because you know they worked hard to write you that check.
Yeah. So basically, what we then do is we use all the tools and skills that we have acquired over our years of working in maybe not so great venues and use that to turn the mundane, the ordinary into something extraordinary, something interesting to look at, something interesting to watch, something visually pleasing to the viewer.
Right, 'cause I always say I want somebody who was actually at the wedding to look at our films and be interested, even though they were already there. They didn't see the wedding the way we saw the wedding. I mean, I'm sure you've seen like the TikToks and the Instagrams, like how you see the event, and then it cuts to how my camera sees the event, and it's
Yes.
totally different.
I'm sorry, I was sharing my screen, but we've had couples say to us before, my wedding didn't look like that. My wedding didn't, like they were kind of shocked
Like
at
my
how
wedding didn't
good.
look as You
as
made it
good.
look so much better
Like they
than
made
it
it,
actually,
we
yeah.
made it look better than they thought it did. And so that's always the goal, right? We want to make everyone, every person, every place, everything at the wedding look better than in real life. That's why we're there.
Yep.
All right, so cinematic alchemy. So we're taking the ordinary and making it extraordinary, or taking lead and turning it into gold. Not that I'm saying that
I love gold.
their wedding was lead or that their wedding was less valuable, but I'm saying
Oh, the
that.
parallels, yeah,
Yeah,
fits,
okay, cool,
absolutely.
cool, cool. So you know us, Amber and Garrett, your friendly neighborhood filmmakers who've been filming for, I've been filming for 20 years. I don't know how long he's been filming. 25, 28? I don't know, something along those lines. We have a picture I'll show you by the end of this series for sure of Garrett at his first wedding. Okay, so we love the cinematic. We have a flair for the cinematics. So we're gonna show a quick 1.5 minute film, and then we'll break down some of the techniques that we use to elevate and make it more interesting and visually impactful. This wedding was at Scottish Rite Cathedral in downtown Indianapolis. It is a gorgeous venue. I'm just looking at these lanterns were all hung.
Yeah, this is for Instagram, right? Like
Yes.
they got a longer form,
Yes.
but this was just
This
the
is their
Instagram
Instagram
teaser.
teaser. So here we go.
This definitely isn't the fairy tale love I had imagined. It is so much more. You are my haven, my shelter, my best friend, my cheerleader, and my lighthouse in a storm. The all-encompassing, deep, and unyielding love that you have brought into my life. You are truly my heartmate.
I can't express enough how comforting it is to have someone like you to rest my head next to at night and to wake up to every morning. I vow to share a life with you that is fulfilling for both of us, to never stop doing the small things that bring a smile to your face, and to share all that life has to offer us, to be faithful to you in this commitment made in love, and to always hold you in the highest regard. I love you, Hannah.
That was quick.
That was quick. That was a
I
good
love that
wedding.
one. Yeah,
that
that
was
was
a
a good
good
one.
wedding.
We had amazing toast. I mean, the father of the bride did an amazing job. The best man. Those were actually the audio clips were their parts of their vows at the ceremony. So it was just before we even started, it was kind of already a gold mine, but we really dug deep to enhance it a little bit.
And I think, I mean, that was an amazing wedding, but she also got a dog as her gift. So there was
Best gift
that.
ever.
And they also, was that the one that also had bagpipes?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So on those stairs, they had bagpipes playing as the guest came in. So stinking cool. I think that, is that on our Facebook page? Okay, anyway, the longer form. All right, so, you know, a wedding is a wedding. Why do all this extra work? Why make it cinematic? Why be extra, Garrett?
Because you want people to book you and make money.
That is very true. That is,
Well,
yeah.
I've always said the most boring way to shoot pretty much anything is to be on a tripod with a 35 millimeter at eye level. That is, in my opinion, the most boring thing to see, because
That's the
there's-
human view.
That's just, it's what everybody can see,
That's
right?
what everyone
So
sees.
I always say a lot of my favorite shots are lower and on the ground. I love getting low shots. I love framing the image so that you can see, you know, it's really tempting to just lock in your subject in the dead center and fill the frame with just your subject. But sometimes, and we'll talk about it here in a minute, when you can pull back and you can frame your composition in a way that's more interesting. I'm getting ahead of us, I know, but that really tends to lend well to making it more cinematic.
Well, yes, that is true. And I feel like it's a hallmark of a young filmmaker that will do that, you know. And I think that we've all, like, rule number one is get the shot in the can,
Yeah.
you know. So once you've gotten that figured out, then you can start layering everything else. So get the shot in the can properly. Get your exposure, and make sure all of your essentials and basics that we've already talked about is solid.
Right.
Then you can start adding this stuff in.
And
So
when you do have to be on a tripod, like during the ceremony, during the toast, we always like to be on like it's a 70 to 200, usually at 200, because you get that nice focus fall off in the back, you get that compression, and you get some extra bokeh, and you're recording what the guests aren't seeing. I mean, the guests are seeing them getting married. They're seeing them give the toast, but they're not, seeing just their shoulders and head and seeing the tears well up in their eyes. So that's super important to us.
all right, so one of the quote I chose to start this off is, there are no rules in filmmaking, only sins, and the cardinal sin is dullness.
I refuse to drink from the cup of mediocrity.
Yes. So
What famous person said that quote?
I think I got it off of a greeting card. But I did give it to you.
I thought it was me. I thought I came up with it, but
Didn't you?
I don't know. That's been in my head forever. Like every time I'm
That cup, that greeting card that I gave you with the toast.
I don't remember.
Okay.
Okay, moving on.
Okay, so we're not going to be dull. So so why we're wanting to push the cinema is to evoke emotion, right? So whenever you see a beautifully cinematic shot, like we were watching a horror film last night, and there were some amazing cinematography. There was amazing cinematography, and I was just like, whoa, that's gorgeous. But it was also like used to drive the narrative of the film, and it evoked so much emotion.
And there wasn't a lot of like steady cam shots and gimbal shots. They were just perfectly composed, and the action, well, like for instance, there was one shot where there was this guy laying down in this barn, and the monster of the movie was walking in from the back, but you didn't see the monster for a long time. You just saw this. It started with a massive shadow, and as he got closer, the shadow just got smaller and more defined, and smaller and more defined, until you finally, the monster was revealed. But it's just things like that you don't have to have the moving shots all the time. Please do not shoot an entire wedding on your gimbal. You're going to ruin it.
You're getting ahead of us
I'm
again.
sorry. I get
All
excited.
right, I know. Another reason that we use cinematography is to connect with your audience. So, like you said, that definitely, that scene, there was another scene I want to talk about later that definitely like is drilled into my brain, but that one was for sure.
Yeah, without the
fantastic
connection,
one.
they lose interest, and they're not gonna watch it.
So whether they're in it or not, like it's easy for your clients to watch your films because they're in it.
Right.
But we like it when we hear, I cried and that wasn't even anyone I knew. Like we get that a lot. So those are the types of things that you're going to get if you use some of these goals.
And the easiest way to lose connection with your audience is to just show shot after shot after shot of eye candy, or shot after shot after shot of the bride and groom together. That gets boring real quick, and you're definitely going to lose a connection there.
So you want a variety of shots.
Yes,
Yes. So
you want-
that's, yeah.
Tell a story.
We have, yes, we've talked about that. So the most effective ways to play with cinematography as a filmmaker, specifically for weddings, is use of light and making sure that how it falls on faces, how you can use light versus shadow in your film, and things like that. So before you get crazy with light, just give me 2 seconds to set it up.
You know me too well.
He's just like chomping at the bit. Okay, so understanding outdoor natural light is important, because as filmmakers on weddings, a lot of the times we find ourselves in outdoor natural light. So we need to look for places that tend to give the feel that we want. So a lot of the times we're looking for things like open shade, you know, a very large shaded place. But sometimes we're not. Sometimes we're looking, like sometimes I look for what's called mottled light, like it's patchy, because I think it's beautiful whenever you have mottled light and you can just like step somebody, like let's say the bride, step the bride into the mottled light and then expose for maybe just the face or even the eyes, and everything else is like falls to black. Super, super
And it looks
cool.
really cool. Like you'll look for like a tree, and they'll be like, oh no, there's like patches of light coming through, and your first instinct is, no, that's not going to work. But it does work. It's more of an avant-garde.
Yeah.
But if you put them in that, and then there's like it's all shadowy, but then there's like a few spots, and let's say there might be a spot coming across, full sunlight hitting their face. And by this time, she has plenty of makeup on most of the time. She's not going to be super shiny because they have a lot of powder, a lot of, I don't know, all the foundations, whatever. She's not going to be super shiny, more than likely. So if you put her there and you expose for that hot spot, and then like the rest of her face kind of falls off into darkness, it's very avant-garde, very to me high-end looking. And you don't want to shoot the whole thing like that, but for a couple cool little clips, I love it.
So, you know, you need to make sure that you can understand and utilize outdoor natural light. Also looking for natural reflectors. And 99% of the time you're working with your photographer, so they're looking for the same things that you are, right? Looking for open shade, looking for natural reflectors like limestone buildings. Like that's something we have a lot of around here, or in downtown Indianapolis. So or concrete, you know, like concrete in front of you will also create a natural reflector. And then placing your couple correctly in the light, you know, making sure that their body and their face are in the light in a attractive way, in an intentional way.
Right. If you, like, for instance, you wouldn't want the light all reflecting up from underneath them, because then it looks like a horror movie. This shot here is right before the first look. It was the entryway to the Scottish Rite Cathedral, and there was no light in there. It was just awful. So we opened up the front doors, we let the natural light in, and then it did fill the room, but it really was quite hot on the, what I mean by hot on the bride is very bright on the bride. So we pulled our exposure down, the rest of the room kind of dropped off a little bit, and we got this really cool light coming across her that was just very soft and very flattering.
It was gorgeous. And I mean, 99% of the time, you using natural light to enhance. Why did I write it like that? Enhance natural light indoor. I think I meant. I made myself a note.
Dyslexic much?
Using natural light inside to enhance.
Right.
So making sure, like when you arrive for prep, whether it be for a man or a woman, that you are placing them in front of beautiful window light, because again, most of the time, like a makeup artist is going to be looking for that anyway. So understanding where to put somebody whenever they're getting ready is also very important. And like that, like we use the light from that door, the natural light from that door, to shine in on her on that last shot.
Right. And when we're doing the hair and makeup, we're not, I mean, we're there for a lot of it, but we're not shooting a lot of it because nobody wants to see, like, the bride getting her eyelashes glued on or the extensions pinned in. That's not going to make the cut. So we're there for really the touch up. In fact, sometimes we even have them fake, just finish touches.
Yeah, like I think that
Right.
clip right there was a fake.
Window light here. Make sure you turn off the overhead lights if you can, because you don't want that mixed light. It's just not going to look as good. Just so you can take control of the light and say, hey, just for like 5, 6 minutes, 10 minutes maybe, can I turn off all the lights and just use the windows from the lights? Or maybe the makeup artist has, a lot of times they'll bring their lights. So if you turn those tungsten lights off, it just makes the light so much smoother and nice, and you don't have these shadows coming down.
So another thing that we like to do specifically during the prep with light, oh, hold on, this is not the right place. So you saw this clip here. So this is just literally putting the bride's face toward the window, and then making sure that we are in a good place here for this second clip. so that I keep hitting the wrong button. So that
So
the light is flattering on the bridesmaids and the bride as well.
real quick, I want to mention both of these shots that look like they're on a slider or a gimbal are both handheld. So I'm handheld a lot during the day. I've figured out a way to get like
We're gonna talk about that
okay.
cinematic like movement tendency.
Yes, but keep in mind that was handheld.
Handheld.
And Sony has a new stabilizing system that's not just the 5-axis, but it's called active stabilization. So it zooms in just a touch and kind of digitally stabilizes it while you're moving. So I'll just hold it, tuck my shoulders in, and kind of just do that, and have just enough, especially when I have some foreground really close to the lens, to give me that look, without having to bust out my gimbal and.
All right, so then so to take it another step further, so we know how to use natural light effectively outside and inside. So then we take it a step further and we start adding lights to it. So one thing that we like to do during bride prep, and a lot of times like that shot with the lips, what we'll do is, hey, hand me the little light. Garrett will have me just like hold a little light, like he exposes just for that bright spot.
Just for the hottest spot.
Just for that hot. So like say we're in a hotel room that doesn't have that giant window. So that I think was like, I don't know what that area was. It was like a gathering place. So it had a giant wall-sized window.
It was a suite.
Yeah,
in a hotel.
where like sometimes you just don't have like a lot of space and a lot of light. So just carrying around a small light like this one from Hobo Light, and then we just turn that on, and I'm the walking tripod, and I'll just hold it there. Hey, I mean, sometimes we've had bridesmaids like, hey, you're not busy, can you do that? Yeah. Like if you've been there for long enough and they know you, then they'll do whatever they want. Like,
Yeah, like the ring shot, it's on the screen now. And I think we'll show
Yeah.
another ring shot later.
Yes.
Is an example of just using a light, a small light like this, and then I'll do it with the bride's face too, like what she was just talking about, and then I'll lock down my camera, and then we'll move the light and create like this cascading shadow that'll just kind of move across, very avant-garde, very elegant.
So like both of these, this shot, were you moving the light, the first one, were you moving the light in the chandelier?
So I was moving the light in that shot, but that is a disco ball. So
I
it's
forgot.
it's a turning disco ball in the suite.
That's what it was, the
so
disco
I didn't
ball.
really need to
You didn't
add
turn
any
that on.
movement to it. I just locked
The
it down.
next shot though, the
Yeah.
shot of the dress, the second one, that's either
I'm
Garrett or I in
literally
the
just-
background just moving the light around. Okay. All right, and then we can also use light as a story element. So that's another thing that we can think about is how light can affect different moods. You can go from warm and intimate to dramatic. So you have to think about lighting in that way too. Like what mood is it
I
driving?
tend to lean towards dramatic lighting. As you can kind of see here, this is, I mean, I do have all kinds of like lanterns and things, and I could have just popped a lantern up and then turned it up and then everything's lit up, but I like, especially for my corporate shoots, I like to control all elements of the light. So we have like a little soft box with the grid here, then I have little LEDs kind of making different, our Star Wars stuff pop out. And I like to be able to control the light. On a wedding day, it's a little bit more difficult, but when I'm doing like the ring shot or like this shot here of the cake, I have a light, I don't think it was this one, but it was one, a light about this size that was on a
light stand
right next to the cake. And so I'm turning it up full blast, and by doing that, I am really drawing your attention to the cake, and the rest of the room is falling off into darkness. You still get a little bit of the bokeh, you get a little bit of the glassware, a little bit of the obstruction in front of the cake, and then as the camera slides to the left or right, it reveals it. It is like a grand reveal of the cake. And surprisingly, they opted for. I was actually really surprised that this wedding had it was a very small cake, so it was important to me to make it look epic without taking away from the grandeur of it all.
Yeah, because this venue is fairly large too, so that is a pretty small cake for the. I think this venue usually does like a small, like you can do a small cake and then they cut sheet cake in the back. So
Right.
they don't. It's not all coming from that, but and not only that, this trick is good for. This is going to hide a multitude of sins. So if you can just think, like, if there was distracting elements in the background, gone. So anytime you're like, I really would like to get a shot of that, but there's so much going on and it's such a messy background, light the heck out of it, drop the background out, and you're good to go. That is one way you can make a venue that may not be the nicest look elegant and high end. We've
Right.
done that trick a million times, not on venues like this, and it works perfectly. Like, say there was corrugated aluminum behind them, we've done it.
Yeah.
And it works perfectly, so this maybe it looks beautiful here because it is a beautiful place, right? But just imagine that at your normal, like, VFW Moose Lodge, wherever you're going. I mean, and like, you can even at hotels, like a hotel ballroom, there's trash cans and exit signs, and
Or you may be doing the first look or something, and you may be working with a photographer that really wants the first look shot on a 35 or 50 millimeter. They want to be up close. So I carry in my bag, it's a magnifying glass.
No,
What am I getting
that's
ahead of myself?
later.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry,
I just get
you were,
excited.
no, I know you're getting excited, but there's a rule. Okay. Back to
More
lighting.
more to come.
Lighting. We're talking about light right now. Okay. Anything else you want to say about light? Because that was kind of it about the lighting is what we were going to be talking about for this section.
The same applies for the first dance. We do also have like barn doors and lights that give us a really narrow beam of light, so we can really we usually put two lights up on either side of the dance floor, and if they set them up across from each other, you have a hair light and you have a fill light, and then if they turn and keep turning, then they reverse, and you have, no matter which angle you go from, you're going to have a nice hair light and a nice face fill light. So that's usually we have a Fresnel on it, and then some barn doors. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to make the mistake of just blasting light everywhere on the dance floor. A lot of these weddings have lighting techs that come in, and they'll have what they call gobos or something. They'll have like swirly patterns on
Yeah.
the floor, and they'll
Yeah.
have beautiful uplighting. And
They don't like it when you mess that up.
if you come in and just turn on, especially, when we first started, we had those like 1x1 LED panels, which you really can't control where that light goes, so it would just go everywhere. But you definitely want to not interfere or take away from the ambiance of the lighting that they've paid to already have set up.
And another thing I forgot to talk about whenever we were, the clip of her by the door, the shot of her by the door, this one right here. I don't know, can they see that? I think they can. But we do the same thing. One time we were filming in, it was basically just a big open room that was like what was it, like a banquet room. But that's where it was too much of just nothing.
Yeah.
So then what I also did, I put the bride right next to the window, and I did the same thing, and it just blacked out the rest of it. So you can, this trick will hide a multitude of sins, whether you're using natural or artificial light. Because this is how you're going to hide those distracting elements in the background, things that you wish weren't there, things that are just ugly, like, it's just a part of life, and they have to be there.
I do have something else to add. It was a golf course, and it was in a nice room, but it was in a pretty drab, darkish room in the golf course basement, and there wasn't any natural light coming in. So I had just grabbed a light and set it on top of a locker or something, and just aimed it up at the ceiling was white. I think they had the white tiles, and I just aimed it up at the ceiling and turned it on like, I don't know, 40% or something, just to give it a little bit of kick, and it really filled the room with a nice, hit the ceiling, came off and bounced, and had a really nice soft look to it. We positioned her over by that to get ready, and it turned out really nice.
Evansville Country Club.
Yep. That's the one.
They put you in a dark hole for bride prep. All right, so now we're gonna shift to some actual techniques, like camera techniques.
Okay.
And then we'll shift to creative obstruction last. From camera techniques to creative obstruction. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so storytelling through visuals. Using cinematic techniques to craft a narrative that feels immersive and emotional is
Amber,
what we're
what
gonna
is a
do.
cinematic technique?
Why don't you start talking about some of those?
Okay.
What are
Well,
some cinematic techniques that you like to use, Garrett?
so not when you think cinematic shot, a lot of people, myself included, your brain jumps to movement.
Yeah.
Like the camera has to be moving. And yes, that is a cinematic technique. It looks very cool. It doesn't look cool if you have 58 of them in a film. Well, okay, if you're Michael Bay shooting Transformers, then every shot is a moving shot, and that's a little bit different. But to tell a compelling story of a wedding, the moving shots are there to accentuate the rest of it. So the moving shots really come into play when there is something moving happening. So I don't want every single shot of the guys getting ready to be on a gimbal. I don't want every shot during the ceremony to be on a gimbal. What shot during the ceremony would be a great shot for a gimbal, Amber?
The kiss.
The kiss. So a lot of times I'll wait, make sure my cameras are locked down, I'm good to go, and then as they kiss, I'll just like make sure the photographer knows what I'm doing because they're usually you're usually for the kiss working shoulder to shoulder. You're both trying to get that sweet spot, and so we'll both walk up towards them, or I'll go up really close and then slowly pull back with the gimbal with a really like 24, no, I'd probably use yeah, definitely 14 millimeter, a big wide epic shot, and then pull back slowly as they kiss. And of course, Amber, she's over here. She has a 70-200 locked in on them. My 70-200 is on a tripod someplace else locked in on them. So adding that motion when it's needed, not all the time. Another cinematic technique that's not motion is your framing, your composition, being able to show a story being told without only seeing a little bit of the story. So a lot of times, I think you have an image of this.
So we're going to be talking about composition after we're talk about the motion spots.
Okay.
So we'll talk about composition after that. So for this first part, we're going to talk about using motion to drive your cinema, and using the visuals to help that. So like for this clip, that's cinematic AF.
Right, no camera movement.
No camera movement.
It's literally.
But that's cinematic AF.
It's a ring, and I have those candles weren't there by
I don't
accident.
know why it's not looping. Hold on, I'm gonna switch that so it loops.
Interestingly enough, I don't always bring a like a magic arm and a clamp for some reason. I don't remember why. I had one with me, and this sword was something the family has used for generations to cut through the wedding cake. And so I thought that would be a pretty important thing to be a cool prop to have for the ring shot. And I was doing the ring shot at the reception, which is what I always do, so I have time to plan things out and make it look extra cool. So I had the magic arm clamped to the side of a table, and then I clamped the other end of that to the sword. And then, of course, you saw it sitting there, put the rings on it, and then I went to the other tables, stole their candles, put them behind it for some nice bokeh, locked down my camera on a tripod, and literally just did a few takes of me doing this with a harsh light. I didn't have any like softening on it. I want it to be harsh for those diamonds to glitter in the fake sunlight. So I'm just kind of moving around, and I probably do 3 or 4 different things just to see what happens. And it's a nice reveal when it starts dark. You're like, what the hell's going on with that shot? And then the light comes in, like, oh, that's beautiful.
That is really amazing. And you also look kind of crazy while you're doing it, but that's okay. I always just thought he liked to do it so he could take a seat for like 30 minutes.
Yeah, Amber, this ring shot it takes 2 hours. Yeah, sure.
But the other thing is, did you tell the story of the sword? The sword was in their family, and
Yeah,
they used it. Okay,
Yeah.
I was trying to get it to loop while you were. So
I mean, we already had
storytelling-
the sword in it, and it was in it when they cut the cake. But
Yeah.
this is a little more. It makes it more of a centerpiece. I'm sure they appreciated that.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure that nobody else in their family has a video clip like that either. So I think that's pretty cool. So we use it through visuals, and we also use cinematic techniques of movement and dynamic shots. So, we're using the drone, the gimbal, the slider, and all of those types of things. Like Garrett said, during the emotional and moving parts of the film.
Another time when I use we have a what's it called? It's the Rhino Arc 2
Yeah.
motion controlled slider.
Yes.
So we put that on the floor. Again, I love those low shots on the floor in the back, behind the back pew. Well, I should say I use the 14 millimeter if the church is beautiful. If it's a venue that's not freakishly gorgeous, then I'll probably use like a 50 millimeter, maybe even 85.
But that's a way that you can, like, if you don't have a beautiful epic church, then just use a tighter lens. These are ways that you can fake it out to make it look better. Because, like, I mean, we've been there, folding chairs were the chairs that they used down the aisle. We're not going to use a 12 millimeter,
Right. And so what I'll do is I'll program it. And so it'll sit back there and just go back and forth the whole time. And there's two shots I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for when Dad and the bride walk down the aisle. I love a reveal from under the pew as the 14 comes out, reveals the church and reveals her dress going by. It's beautiful. Oh, I love that shot. And I'm also looking for when they kiss at the very end. If I'm not in the center, then that's a good shot for, like, if I'm not up front getting the shot. The big wide shot is absolutely gorgeous.
So, like, another scenario where we would use this is during the first dance. Like, he has it set up to slide in between a bunch. Like, I think that's the head table. So like they had a
This
big
was handheld.
long. Oh, was it?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a very, very short clip. And of course, I think I was shooting at 60 frames a second here. So when I slow that down, it makes that movement look even longer. You can see if you look really hard at it, you can tell it's not perfectly stable.
I wasn't even. I've looked at that clip 6 times and didn't notice it. So you better not be noticing it. But
I'm just saying that nobody in the world would know that it's not
Yeah.
a perfectly stable shot. But I'm just there holding it, just doing a little.
so now you can go on your diatribe about not using the one thing too many times. Like, don't use the gimbal too much. Don't use it. So we've all been there. Whenever we got our Steadicam rig for the first time,
Oh, here's a perfect example, and I
we
love.
used it the whole time.
Yeah, I did. I made
You
a
did.
mistake. But like, there's a movie came out maybe a year or so ago called Ambulance with Michael Bay, and it was one of the first blockbuster movies that I recall seeing a lot of first-person view drone cinematography. Like, you've seen drone shots, big wide angle up high, looking down, but this is one of the first times where he used a lot of first-person drone looking footage where it was flying in and zooming out. And, I mean, it was really cool, but the movie should have been called FPV Drone because it was used just so much. Every time it would cut to your camera flying down between stuff and zooming in and out, it was just overly done, and it took me as a filmmaker. I noticed that it just took me out of the great movie. I really enjoyed it, lots of action, but it was just like that was just way too much. And when we would judge wedding films at WPPI, a lot of people use the drones way too much, and they're great for establishing shots. I usually do maybe one at the venue. If I get lucky, I'll do one inside the venue if it's a really tall church or something. And then I love doing one of like the bride and groom walking through the forest or somewhere through the vineyard, and then doing a drone shot with them in it. But my drone shots are usually not the God's eye view looking down. They're usually at treetop level or maybe just a little bit lower. That way I can, those trees that are over here and over here, they're on the side of the lens and not down beneath the lens. So a little bit of movement, you don't have to be going very fast, just a little bit of movement. It's really nice and elegant. The trees are moving, everything's moving, you're getting closer to the bride, or maybe you're pulling back, getting further away. It's a very elegant shot as opposed to just buzzing around like a bird or something.
So I think we might need to show. So sometimes you're like, I'm just in this big open thing. What am I gonna do to make this look cinematic? How can I get the look of motion? So one thing that you have to realize is that whenever you have a camera, so we just have this open table. And we want to get a shot of this, right? We want to get a shot of this, and we have this open table. You can just do a shot of it. That's boring, right? Or you can put something next to it. So this is what he's saying with the trees.
Foreground.
You putting something next to it as the camera's going, it's gonna go past this faster, right? So
Yeah,
it's gonna give the illusion of more travel, meaning you have a longer slide, and it'll move faster and differently. So it's gonna look more appealing visually.
Right. Yeah. So objects that are closer to the lens move quicker. So if you let's just do this real quick. Let's set up our and I've done this with like if the first dance is not super beautiful. It's just a dance floor and there's not much going on. There's the band maybe in the background, but it's not that gorgeous or that pretty. I've went and stolen, that's borrowed candles, as many as a dozen from the tables and sat on the ground. And then like if this is my couple out here, just exactly like she was saying, I'll put the candles. I'll even like stack them on things. And then as your camera is moving towards the couple or even coming around an object, these are going to move quite a bit faster. So you're going to just see that motion's going to be accentuated, and you're going to see that. And of course, you don't want to go too fast, obviously. And then if you have a wide angle lens, like even, what is this? This is the 24. Even with a 24, if you're pushing between these two objects, these are going to move quite a bit faster. And this is going to stay out here, and it's going to give the sense of movement, which is what I really like. Another way we do that is I shoot on the 50 millimeter on a wedding day, like 90% of the day. That's my focal length. That's my jam. That's what I can work with. And so I will choose the 50 and one of my moving cinematic gimbal shots, and I'll tell my photographer, I'll tell, whoever I'm working with, hey, when they first start dancing, I'm going to get in there tight with my gimbal. I'm going to do one, hopefully just one, unless I mess something up, I might do two, but I'm going to go for one. I'm going to go in and I'm going to do a swirl around them. And so with the 50, and you get kind of close to them on a gimbal, not overly close, but you can do the math. Maybe you can have an 85, might be better for you. But you're going to get that compression in the background, and as you take the gimbal and move around them, and usually if they're going clockwise, I'll go counterclockwise, however they're dancing, so then the motion just adds more depth to it. And then as I go around it, the background is going to be moving faster. So your background, when you're focused on them, I always shoot wide open for this shot, so I'm probably like 1.2 or 1.4, something like that. The background's going to be bokeh'd out. There's going to be beautiful bokeh lights and stuff. And as you're going around, it's going to be a nice, the background is going to be moving faster than your foreground. So this is the opposite of what we just talked about. So the 50 millimeter with that compression and that motion, you should keep them in the middle and you're going around them. I usually just do one time, and I'm shooting at like 60 frames a second for that shot. So when you slow it down, it's a beautiful, elegant shot. The background's moving, you're moving around them. Life is perfect. And hopefully I don't have to do more. I have had to do more than once, but for the most part, I get on the first try. Then I back off, and usually I'll get back into, I'll either stay on the gimbal or go handheld, and I will find some like dinnerware or some glasses, some things that give me beautiful like specular highlights and reflections, and I'll kind of shoot, like I'll put the glasses like here, and then I'll just kind of not do a whole lot of movement, but just a little bit of organic movement, and it looks perfect.
You got ahead of us a little bit again there. So then we're also going to talk about speed ramping and slow motion for emotional impact. So whenever I guess that's a little more in the edit, but it's part of the cinema. So whenever you're thinking about what you're filming on the day, you might want to think about your frame rate and things like that. We're not getting into frame rate right now, but we're going, think about those type of things so that you can use them in post. Like, the types of things throughout the day where you may want to play with the
Like the speed ramps?
The speed, yeah, you want to play with the speed, so you may want to speed something up or slow it down. A lot of the joke is that 99% of their stuff is slowed down in wedding film, but it's just part of it.
And if you want to know what a speed ramp is, watch the movie Black Adam. That movie should be renamed Speed Ramp the movie, because it looks cool. But something to use very, very sparingly.
Yes.
And if you don't know what a speed ramp is, I'm sorry. It's like when you have I do it a lot on. You'll take the first part of the frame or the last part of the sequence, and you'll speed it up real fast, and then slow it down real fast. So if I want to show the whole aerial of the church or something, the first part of the clip, maybe it's speeding around and then it goes shoom and stops to the beat of the song or something, depending on what's going on. It just has a cool effect. And if you can hear our dogs, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, should we go and take them? Should
They're
you take them
fine.
to the backyard? Okay.
They're fine. They'll be
All right.
okay.
Okay. Reggie. Okay. So, all right. So Garrett was chomping at the bit to talk about composition, and this is something that is so powerfully effective, but not spoken about a lot is composition, because I'm gonna take him to the backyard.
Okay.
Do you want to get us started about composition?
Right.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the rule of thirds. You talk about the rule of thirds, and I'm going to let him out the back door.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
So rule of thirds, it's a very, if you're in doubt, then frame it in frame your subject or frame the object, whether it be a person, maybe it be the rings, into one of three of the thirds. Usually, and I think she has a couple examples on here. I like doing extreme thirds. Just trying to use a piece of paper as an example. But let's say if this is your framing, I like a lot of times if I'm in a beautiful venue, I like showing like the majority of the venue in the frame, and then maybe have the bride and groom down here in the corner. And so you can see, in fact, there is an image on here, and when she comes back, I'll show it to you. But where I have the bride and groom, pardon me, down here in the corner. And one of the main reasons why I did that, because the venue was very, very pretty. And yes, I could have shot on a 24 millimeter and to show everything, but I was on a 50 like I usually am. And so I framed it in a way that you could see in the background up top. Do you have that picture?
Which one?
Of them and during their first dance, where they're framed in a lower third, and you can see like the people upstairs, and you can see the lanterns hanging down. But I did that because it's of course I didn't do that for the entire sequence, but it was a very informative shot, not only beautiful but informative, because you could see the people upstairs standing looking down on their first dance. And then you could also see,
right here.
yeah, there we go. And you could also see all the beautiful lanterns that they had hung. So there's a lot of information, there's a lot of storytelling elements that are there. And rarely do I frame things dead center unless it's a very symmetrical shot. The bride and groom at the altar, or the ring shot. If I can get a lot of symmetry happening for myself, that's when I love to put things in the center.
That was the next clip with symmetry.
Perfect. And it's a stylized choice. But yeah, I really like, especially keep in mind to have looking room. So if your bride and groom might be over here, or the person you're interviewing at a corporate job, it's very off-putting to have them looking off-screen with their nose this close to the edge of the screen. Usually, unless it's an artistic styled choice for yourself, I've seen it done very well, and it's awesome. But usually, you want the person looking to where you have the most space in the frame. So if you have, the bride and groom here, or maybe just the groom, he might even be reading a letter or getting ready, you have him facing the empty space over here, and it's just a more pleasing way to view what's happening.
Garrett is a sucker for symmetry. I think that a lot of people are. There's something so satisfying about symmetry, and so
I think it's because it's difficult. So when you nail it, you're like, yes.
Like this shot right here is so gorgeous, and something with the leading lines and symmetry. We love a really symmetrical, like, wide shot, though, specifically the one in the back. Like, our back shot definitely needs to be symmetrical. So last night we were watching this horror film, and there was this beautiful shot just top down of a lake, and there's this woman
swimming in the lake.
Just swimming in the lake.
Little does she know.
There's a freaking alligator swimming right behind her. She doesn't know it, and it was such
she
a
makes
powerful.
It, by the way.
She makes
fine.
it. So it was just like perfectly top down. Like, she was directly in the middle, and the dock was here, and she was just swimming perfectly. It was such a visually stunning image, and the same with the barn scene. It was just so symmetrically beautiful with the barn door with the dead guy, and then the shadow. It's just it's it's a powerful visual composition to use.
Right, and it works also in other environments other than weddings and movies. Last week we helped shoot. What was the band?
I don't know if we're supposed to say.
Okay, it was a very popular band. It was at the House of Blues in Chicago, and so we had 3 camera angles, and then I wanted a symmetrical shot in the center, so I set up a 24 millimeter dead center with the crowd of people in the bottom, and the stage and the pillars on the side of the stage filled the frame, and so that was a very, very important shot because there were several things that happened during, like there was like a pyrotechnics went off, and then snow came
And
down,
the lights,
and we got those with the other shots, but
Yeah.
the symmetry, like when all of those pyrotechnics and smoke hit and boom explodes up and light shoots out, we have that on that back camera, that 24 millimeter, and it just gave a perfect view. And of course the stage people did amazing jobs. All the smoke was like perfectly, like the whatever the cannons are that shoot up, it was all perfectly symmetrical, and it's just
It was timed perfectly.
there was no other way you would have got that kind of emotion from the camera unless it was framed in the back, dead center, symmetry, locked in.
Basically, what we're saying is we love a good Wes Anderson moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like literally taking all of this, like, all of the inspiration from all the movies we watch, whether it's Wes Anderson or a horror film, and combining it into what we do on a daily basis. We also like to frame subjects with natural elements. So that's why I use this, because in this shot, I think this was my shot also. That looks like one that I would do, right?
Looks really good.
I use the stars like to frame the couple, but you can also use like trees, anything that acts as a natural frame. Door frames, that's the obvious one, but anything that acts as a natural frame for your couple, it literally is your pointing to what you're supposed to be looking at in the frame. Like, we're pointing at the thing you're supposed to be looking at. So
I love a good silhouette on a window.
yes,
I love
yes,
that.
yes.
At this wedding, I don't think it was on the teaser, but on their full length, I have a beautiful shot of them walking past
the
just
stained
a
glass.
gorgeous stained glass window, and exposed for
Yeah.
the stained glass, so they're just a silhouette.
Yeah. Another thing that we do with composition a lot is depth and layering. So you'll see a lot in our films, literally just layering stuff in front of the camera.
It makes it more interesting.
Yes, makes it way more interesting. Even to the point of like at bride prep, I think there was a clip in here earlier. Layer hairspray bottles in front of it. Put things in front of your camera so that you can get depth and interest without sacrificing the image. And we're not adding things that aren't already there. We're just positioning ourselves to where we can look through them.
Right, and it doesn't work as well if you have a 35 or 24. I would say the minimum is a 50, because I use that quite often. But if you are at a 35 or a 24 and you're trying to do that, you're going to look like a horror movie when there's like a creepy guy looking behind the bushes, they're moving around. So I would say 50 millimeter or tighter to get that kind of layering compression.
So one way that we utilize this in a very real world way is hiding crap. So
Yeah.
I remember one that really sticks out to me was we were at this wedding reception, and for some reason there were a ridiculous amount of trash cans and exit signs, and it was really like the dance floor was narrow, so we didn't have a long.
Oh, that place was full too.
And it was full, and there were just 3 of us. But so what Garrett did is he went and he borrowed a bunch of candles from nearby tables. And so what he does is he literally would just figure out where his camera was going to be and just put the candle like within the view. Like, so he would just like block the view of the exit sign with the candle. So the camera's sitting here and he just used his eyes and like, okay, well, I'm gonna block that exit sign like this, and then block this one like this, and block this trash can like this, and I have a perfectly beautiful composed shot of the couple only on the dance floor. You know, you can see the people behind them mingling, but we're not seeing all the distracting elements, the things that aren't supposed to be there.
Right.
You know, trash cans don't exist in film. Exit signs don't exist in film.
Right.
It's kind of like with Star Trek. You know, bathrooms don't exist in Star Trek. So that kind of stuff is not pretty. So we're not going to put it in there. So we use things like creative obstruction, which is one of Garrett's things, creative obstruction to block the distracting elements. So,
And if there aren't any candles, which is rare that there's not, hand me your glass, Amber. There's always glassware. I've even used plastic fake champagne glasses, but it works. Again, this is the 20. This is the 24. I would not recommend using that. I would recommend using that 50 or tighter. But you can get your glass and do the exact same thing she was just mentioning, but if you don't have a candles look cool because like that previous shot, you could see the light dancing around, but you can actually do the same thing with the glass, and this glass will bend the light and give you some really interesting reflections, refractions, and makes it a little more artsy, let's say. I mean, I've even held it up and you can do stuff like this, just moving it around. It's going to look really, really interesting. Play with it, see what you come up with. But I also keep in my bag I started getting on this earlier. I keep in my bag I think it's a 6-inch magnifying glass I got from Amazon, and I popped out the glass. It's actually not even glass, it's plastic. And I always have that with me because it fits in my back pocket. It's very small, and I don't have it here with me, but I'll hold it up and do the exact same thing. And so I'm actually making part of the frame out of focus. This is really comes in handy when I'm trying to get a shot and maybe the photographer is trying to get his or her shot as well. And so I'll just, instead of saying, hey, move, get out of my way, I'll grab that little piece of glass. I've even used the screen on my phone before, and you just hold it up and you just kind of block them, and it gives it an artsy feel. It looks cool, and it's easy. It's so easy.
That's something that we use a lot, actually, and we've taught we teach workshops, or what is it, photo walks on it, just creative obstruction. So literally just put anything in front of your lens and it can look really cool. So one thing is like, it's helpful if you have light shining at the lens. So for the shot right here that's on the screen, that's called like the ring of fire. So Garrett has taken a copper pipe. It's common to use a 1-inch, but I think you have a
2-inch.
2-inch.
Yep.
And you just put the copper pipe in front of the lens and shoot into the light. And so we use that for ring shots. He's used it. There's a really cool, I think it's in Lindsay and Eric's, so the first one on our website, first dance, because a lot of the times we have like people on the edges on the first dance, sometimes like the photographer is there, and that's fine. We all have to be there. So he'll use that, shooting up into the light and get a really cool shot like that.
And it's a 2-inch wide, so
Yeah,
it's
copper pipe.
I think it may be also 2 inches long, but I think it's a 2-inch copper coupler. I think it's anyway, something like that.
So I mean, Garrett,
Lens Baby makes a really cool
Lens Baby,
thing that screws onto the front. I have that as well, and you have all kinds of different crystals
Got
and
that from B&H.
mirrors and things like that. That's magnetic, that attaches to the front of your lens, and you can move it around to get the perfect shot. It's really cool.
I can't believe you don't have that with you.
I know, right?
Maybe we'll post it. You can post it in your stories or something. But it goes right, and we got it from B&H. It just screws right on the front. Magnet, crystals, so beautiful. But that's another way you can hide distracting elements. Not only that, but it elevates your film, makes it look cooler, and all of those things. Limitations as a catalyst for creativity is one last thing I wanted to talk about. So sometimes we get stuck in a rut. A lot of the times we do as creatives. So one thing that occasionally we like to do is challenge each other. So Garrett had was like, hey, why don't you try to just film this with only one lens, or only one thing, or only one this, or light this with only one light, So sometimes whenever you are so overwhelmed with options, that's called option paralysis. He gets it real bad.
Oh yeah.
taking away all of the things that you can do and just focusing on, well, what can I do with maybe like this 50 and, because we just talked about all of these things you can do, but what can you do with just this 50 and the light that you're given and maybe some creative obstruction, and then you get a film like Sharon. So,
Well,
it
when
is just
when
totally
I
different.
decided to use only like for a long time, like if I had to choose one lens that I had, I mean, I could shoot entire wedding with a 50. I wouldn't want to because there's some times I don't want to get that close to, like during the ceremony and toast. But for a long time, I used the 24 to 70, and that's a great option. It gives you a lot of options. If you like me, I'm ADHD, and it gave me too many options. So when I decided I'm gonna zoom with my feet. If I need something tighter, I'm gonna walk up to it. I'm gonna use the 50, and I'm gonna shoot a wedding and see how I do. And for me at least, it opened up and ignited a level of creativity that I hadn't been to before. And I was exploring options that I never would have thought of because I was out in the field. I only had the 50 and I had to work with what I had. And so that made my mind come up with different ways of using composition, different ways of using lighting. And it really opened up a whole new window of creativity for filmmaking for me.
So we don't have a lot of time left, and I just want to briefly go over the last slide. But, we talk about all of these things that you can do. It doesn't mean you have to do them all at the same time. It doesn't mean that you should be taking away any of the specialness of the couple's day, and don't make a fool of yourself, and basically use discretion and balance and cultural awareness. Like, we are, believe me, as filmmakers, we're of the mindset like the forgiveness is better than permission thing, but sometimes it's not, and sometimes you do cross the line. So you just have to make sure that you use these things all in appropriate ways, and ways that are respectful, and you're not creating distractions and causing problems with your fellow vendors and colleagues. You're doing a good thing for your couple and not just stroking your ego. And you're making something really beautiful, and you can do all of those things. You can. We've done it for 20 years. So that's just the challenge I want to leave for you. So cinema is a matter of what's in the frame and what's out. I love that. That was a Martin Scorsese. And I thought of that last night when we were watching that top-down view of that girl swimming with the alligator behind
Because
her.
you didn't see the alligator for a while.
The shot of her just swimming, you couldn't see the alligator. And that was just so powerful, because in that top down, you could see the alligator swimming behind her, and it looked like it was gaining on her so close. But the one of her, like the tight shot of her swimming, it wasn't in the frame. And so that just led, like, I got goosebumps again. Like, that led to the feeling of like, she doesn't know what's behind her.
And then the tie shot of her, I think it may have been blurred out way in the background.
You couldn't see it.
But you couldn't see
No.
it, but you had tension, like,
Yeah.
hurry, get to the
That's
dock,
exactly
hurry,
right.
hurry.
Yeah, it was what's out of the frame. So I just love that quote.
So,
but-
and I'll tell you where that applies. A lot of times, I will let the shot of the groom looking at the bride coming down the aisle for the first time. I will let that shot breathe for a while until, like, I won't even show the bride, but you can see in his face and in his eyes, he sees her, and you're like, oh my God, he sees her. And then you're like, okay, let me see her. And then it builds a little bit of tension, like, come on, let me see her. And then I cut to the shot, the big wide shot of her coming down with her dad crying. It's just good storytelling. That's what it is. Good storytelling.
Good storytelling. Again, you can find us on social media. We're very open. Eyenamics and Amber and Garrett are very open. We love teaching and speaking to people about film and filmmaking and dogs and plants and Star Wars. So if you have any questions about any of those things, please let us know. We're really excited to have been a part of this again.
So-
I can't remember what our
Let's
next
see it.
one is about. I think maybe Derek might be able to help us out with that. I think we're going to hit stop share here. But there's that. Okay. Hi, Derek. What's going on?
What's going on, guys? We'll get that next one up if Fred could pull that up for me, and we'll give you a nice little reminder there. I love that you guys pointed out the overuse of drone shots. I was over here like hands in the air, like, yes. Can we stop using them for more than establishing shots and maybe a little shot here or there, unless we're
Yeah.
using it more creative? Like I've seen some creative stuff done with the air peak. I got to see, I forget his name, but we had him on here, and they were,
That thing is,
having people hold on to the air peak and use it basically as like a gimbaled camera, and then
yep.
pass it off through a window, and then it goes up into the air. And okay, that I can rock with, but
Yeah, that's
other
pretty
than that,
awesome.
now is speed ramping something else that I feel like that is anytime you get into stuff that is there's a thin line between cool and gimmicky. Like when you use speed ramping too much, it's like, okay, we get it.
It's I feel like all of the tools that we talked about and techniques that we talked about are cheesy if they're used too much. Any of
Mhm.
them in like any of them in any film. It was like
Yeah.
Garrett was saying, Black Adam with was it The Rock? Like he's supposed to like be able to run really fast, but they use speed ramping and like to make I don't know, and it serves a purpose, but then once you just see it too much in anything, so like they're in the filmmaking and wedding world specifically, it's the joke like everything's slowed down, it's like everything's in slow motion, and it gets to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, if I see another slow motion clip that's so slow,
It's the
what?
natural progression of it's like when you
Yes,
start with photography and it's
yes,
like you get a lens ball and then you're like, wow, this is the coolest thing. And everyone who's been a photographer for more than 60 seconds is like, oh my God, no, no, put that away. Don't show that. And I feel like that's kind of like the overly the overuse of slow motion
yes.
and fading between
We've all been there,
cuts, and
believe
it
me.
happens, right?
Like,
It's that
we've all been there.
natural
First,
progression of
mhm.
cliches and
Yeah,
phases and all of
yeah.
that. Well,
It
I do have an update. Part 5, sound stages.
sounds sages.
Sound stage. I'm sorry. See, look at
Sounds
this. I'm going full audio on it. Sound sages.
soundstage.
Take
No,
the
it's
T out of there. I was like, wait, are you
sound.
guys building sound stages over there? What's going on?
Uh,
1028 sound sages.
1028 sound sages. And I think I'm on tomorrow with Monica, so
Double
uh
Oh, now
dose this
you know.
week.
Yep.
uh-huh, double
Double
dose.
dose.
Double
Double
dose,
dipping.
Derek. What you gonna do? It's
I
a little
love
bit
it. I
wild,
love it.
but
I
I'm really excited about that too.
Likewise. You can't get enough of you guys. I do want to before we let you go, sneak
Yes.
a question in here.
Oh yeah.
From visual modulations, modern cameras have crazy good ISO performance, but is there an upper limit that you won't cross?
That's a great question.
The quick answer, nope.
We
For
haven't
two
needed
reasons.
to,
Yeah,
firstly. Like, we don't usually have the need to do
right.
that. Go ahead.
Okay, so we use the S3. S3 is 12 megapixels. The photo cells are so much bigger. The full frame sensor, 12 megapixels. The photo cells are so much bigger. It lets in so much more light. It's rare that we need to even question whether or not we need to raise our ISO because especially if I'm shooting at 1.4, 1.2, or even on our 7200 at 2.8. I never shoot auto ISO, and I'll just keep bumping it up if I need to. But if I'm trying to think of a situation where we wouldn't have enough light. Back in the old days, when we didn't bring in our own lighting for the reception, or we shot receptions that didn't have a lighting technician, things like that. The dance floor is over here. It may have a couple lights, and then the cake cutting's over here in a dark corner. So that is a situation where it's like, oh no, I'm gonna have to shoot a high ISO, and then it's a little troubling. But even back then we had different cameras that I mean these newer cameras. Even my main camera on the wedding day is what we're shooting on right. What you're seeing us through is the A1, and then the S3 is our biggest workhorse. But even if
So,
I have to go super high for I don't know. I can't think of a situation where I would have to go so high, but if I do,
okay.
I can bring it back in post, and there is software that will clean it up and make it look impeccable. But
So, firstly, their S3 has like, dual native ISO, whatever. So 12,800 is where we try to stay so that's pretty high considering, right? That's
Yeah.
pretty high. And so we use that quite a bit indoors. Like we do 640 is the low, 12,800 is the high. And that's what we do most of the time. I think what the answer really is you need to know your own gear in and out. you need to test it. Like I know, and we are not always the best on testing when we should. Sometimes we test on a wedding day because we're just crazy like that. Don't recommend that, but that's when you just really need to understand the limitations of your camera and then what you can do in post too. So test it. Like, okay, well, if I push it here, can I recover anything? You know, so you need to just do the testing because with us again, like that's not a thing we even have to think about anymore. Because at one point, I remember like when we were shooting with back in the olden times, like we're like, don't go past 5,000 ISO, you know, like that was the thing, and or else your image would fall apart. And now it's just not really a thing, and that's the beautiful thing about being in the industry so long, I guess.
Right. I really can't think of a situation where
Yeah.
I wouldn't be worried about it.
Yeah, and I guess that's saying we haven't had to be in so long. So just learn your own gear as good as you can, you know, so you can know when you can push it and when you can't.
I will say that if like on the S3, the dual native ISO, if you're at 12,800, if you're close to 12,800, just go to 12,800. Don't go to the setting right before it, because that's going to be a lot noisier than 12,800.
You can literally watch it happen on the back of the screen. So just knowing your gear intimately is, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but you need to be able to have like muscle memory with it at one point.
And you have to know, because sometimes you're not going to see that ISO noise on the screen on the back of the camera until you get back into the editing bay.
That's a big thing. And I think in addition to knowing your gear, know what you can live with and what you can't live with, and stop comparing your videos to Hollywood.
Right.
Living in New York, one of the greatest things about it in this terms of this is you walk by movie sets all the time and you see the hundreds of people running around, and you see 40-foot scrims that are allowing them to shoot a dimly lit scene at a lower, it's all lighting, it's pieced together lighting, it's tens and hundreds of dollars worth of equipment and the people that go along with it to create a nice dimly lit. It's like I watch movies all the time and I'm like, wow, the lighting's so beautiful. And you know, that lighting probably costs $250,000 and has
Yes.
30 people working it so that it can look dimly lit in but there's no noise. And then you try to film the same thing in a dimly lit room and you're like, why is there all this moving grain on my screen? And so I think it's a combination of comparing yourselves to Hollywood, and I don't mind. I've never minded grain. I've never minded noise. I think in a certain sense it adds, and I think that people, with the help of people like you guys, hopefully it educates the viewer base out there where they can know, well, why is this happening? Is there anything I can do about it? Is this an absolute last resort, like you had just mentioned, Garrett, where there's going to be certain situations where you're like, gotta rock with it. There's nothing I can do here. I gotta roll with it, and I gotta make do with what I have.
Well, we've always called it rock what you got.
Yep.
Like that, like literally. So back in the day, back in the olden times, our tagline our tagline now is your story beautifully told. That's really like what we want to be. But for a long time, it was rocking your romance, you know, like because we didn't take ourselves too seriously. And it was also whenever wedding film was being like having a revolution. And so, but that also was the rock what you got. So like what we were talking about earlier, you don't always have the weddings that are beautiful. You got to rock what you got. And so hopefully you can use some of these tools and techniques that we've shown you to elevate your film by using what you currently have.
Right.
I love it. And part 5, Sound Sages.
Sound. Yes,
That's a big one.
It's a big one, and it's not sexy.
This is the pre-warning.
Yeah.
Audio is not sexy, but if you don't nail your audio, your product's not going to be anywhere close to
sexy. You have
sexy.
bad audio, you have a bad video. Bottom line.
That's it.
Bottom
if you guys tune in for nothing else, I feel like that is one where it's like you can have all the video down, like you said. You could have all the tricks. You could have all the great angles and the great shots and the lighting and the composition, and bad audio. Bad audio is like bad post-processing on an image. It can take something that is so good and just
Well, I
Cool.
feel like for that episode, I need to get a podcast mic like you have, so my voice can be nice and sultry.
You gotta get Gary, you gotta, yeah. I turn it down a couple octaves on it.
That's great.
Well, we're looking forward to it. It's great having you guys on. This series has been wonderful. You guys are helping to take people like me, and it makes me feel more confident about going out there and doing it. It's easier to learn from the mistakes of others and learn from the advice of others than so I don't have to go out there and test it on game day. So a huge thank you to the wonderful Eyenamics team. Of course, Sony for hosting. As always, Garrett, we'll see you next time on part 5. Amber will fall asleep, wake up, and you'll be back on like nothing ever changed. So
Yes.
huge thank you to you guys. We're looking forward to it. And to all of our viewers out there, thank you for tuning in. We did drop some links in the comment section if you guys do need to catch up on parts 1 through 3. And we'll see you guys for part 5. But another edition of the B&H virtual event space now in the books. Catch y'all next time.
Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.